Hi, family. Excuse the roughness. I did a lot of crying last night and praying and seeking, um, as always. This one will be a little better. You'll see my face. I'm not in the car. Please excuse my ugly crying, which I'm sure will happen. But I have always said that my tears are my tongue. He knows. He knows every drop that falls, the words that are inside those tears, or the moans and the groans. So I was giving you the testimony of, being young and walking with my father from the time that I can remember. So I'll tell you a little more about the things that I seen before my mom passed. And then we'll get back to, the actual night she passed and in the morning when I woke up. But we were very poor when I was little. We didn't have money. We had love and we had each other. And that was enough. That was enough for us. My very first memory, I was 4 years old, and it's actually of my grandmother's brother's death, my Uncle Jim, so my great Uncle Jim. I remember him showing up. He lived in Ohio and we lived in Maryland. And I remember him showing up and knocking on the door. He didn't tell anybody he was coming, and I remember my grandma being surprised when she opened the door and she said, "Jim, what are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I came here to die." And my family is pranksters, so I remember, "Oh, Jim." But happy to see your brother nonetheless. From what I understand, my Uncle Jim had this ability to see things before they happen. He was born with a veil over his face, is what they call it. Like physically born with a veil over his face. And he had predicted many things that had come to pass. I can understand that gift. So when he showed up when I was 4 and he told my grandma he came there to die, it was a couple days later. Me and my sister were at the kitchen table eating the chili that had been made for dinner. And I can see it in my head, like looking through the kitchen doorway. You could see into our middle room, and then there was a big opening into the living room where my grandma and my Uncle Jim, I believe my Uncle Denny, was all like sitting in the living room watching TV. I think they were waiting for lottery numbers. And my mom was asleep in the bedroom that was off the middle room. There was a 2-bedroom house. There was a bedroom off the living room, and there was a bedroom off the middle room, and then the kitchen, laundry room, bathroom. I mean, my sister were eating at the table, and then everything just went chaotic. I heard my grandma like screaming, and I remember when I looked over again, like my Uncle Jim was on the floor. So from what I understand that happened is they were just sitting there, and all of a sudden my Uncle Jim fell over onto her lap. And because my families were pranksters, she was like, "Oh, come on, Jim, this ain't funny. Come on, stop." And what happened was he had a massive heart attack, and he did. He died in an instant. No pain, no nothing. And I remember my mom coming out of the room. I don't know who woke her up. I was still in the kitchen. And I remember Mom tripping. I remember she ran across the street to get the ambulance person to come over. There was I don't remember his name. Llewellyn was his last name, I think. Or Lewis was his last name. And I have like the whole memory of like the paramedics coming over and, those type of things. So that was my first encounter with death, was my Uncle Jim's. Now I was, 4 years old, and I didn't know my Uncle Jim that much. I don't remember too much more besides the stories that were passed down by my family of him predicting the future. Now, mind you, that this is the same family that was teaching me that Jesus was coming back, Yahusha was coming back. We were studying eventually like Revelations and those types of things. And then another memory that I have is just like folding towels with my grandma, because I wanted to go to the park and she was teaching me how to fold towels. I don't know if we ever made it that day. I think I've said that before. But I have lots of memories still of like going to church on Sundays, or my Uncle Butchie showing up on Sunday morning dressed in his best. I can see him in his vest and his hat, and the world was always chaotic, but I was always talking to our Father. I was an innocent child who had no doubt in my mind that our Father existed and that these things were true, and you could talk to him. And I talked to him about my everyday life. Like I said last night, he was my best friend. He was my best friend. We didn't have the distractions that we have nowadays. You know, we were poor. We had one TV in the whole house. So, you know, the adults got that most of the time. So, as children, we're left to go outside in nature, to, you know, there wasn't kids in my neighborhood my age, so I played a lot by myself unless Jasmine was over. I would climb trees and sit in the tree and read my Bible. Many Bibles. This was just the one that I had. Probably from like 11 to now. It was actually my sister's Bible that I took from her, and I hope that doesn't mean I stole it, because she knows that I have it. But it had like the right kind of words. Like the wording was right for someone that was 11 years old, that I could read and understand the message. And I've spoken to a lot of my family that says, you know, that they have these same gifts and abilities that I had even as a child. See, I seen those, I guess what they call shadow people. Even when I was little, I was terrified of the dark, because when the sun went down, those things came out in the house. And at first, you know, when I would tell adults about it, they'd be like, no, it's just your imagination. No, it's just your imagination. Those things aren't real. You know, they aren't real. And I think that it was at first to protect me from that. But then I started having my dreams and my nightmares. I guess doctors call them night terrors. But then I started having dreams of the end of the world. And visions of the end of the world. And our Father speaking to me about the end of the world and what signs to watch for. And because again, I don't know how I can emphasize enough that I talked to him every day. He was my best friend. People had imaginary friends. I had him. We didn't believe in imaginary friends, and I had him. My memory starts really well with hearing him about 9 years old, when he started giving me these visions and these dreams. And this understanding of what was to come. I sat and I read this by myself in my room a lot. Revelations in this little tiny book. I didn't highlight just one part of it. I remember when I looked at this again after coming out of witchcraft, and all I have is Revelations underlined in red. He told me he was coming. He told me. So, God talks to you when you read his word. For at least one of my best friends that say, how do you know it's God talking to you? Because a lot of the time I was reading his word. All of the time I was praying to him. All the time I was talking to him. And as a child, they taught me I could do that. This book right here taught me that I could have this personal relationship with him. And as a child, I knew that. No doubt. The world hasn't taught me how to doubt him yet. I didn't know how to doubt him. I didn't know how to doubt the words that was written in this book. To me, every word was set as true. It's true. When I read it, I was reading my family's history. When I read about Lot, and when I read about Job, and when I read about Abraham, I was reading our history. This was a history book on top of the word. This is what your family went through. This is what they have done to help make the way. This is what I ordained them to do. This is what I ordained them to go through. This is my word. And I understood that at 8 and 9 years old with a childlike faith and an understanding that's beyond comprehension, I guess. Because again, he was my best friend. The world hadn't taught me not to love him. And I grew up in a family that would never deny that the Father was speaking to us or using us to prophesy, or they knew there was visions and dreams. How can you have these gifts and not, some churches, no, that's from the devil. No, it wasn't. It wasn't from the devil. It was from God. He says he would give us these things. So, as I would study this book day in and day out and go to different church meetings and do different things, as part of the choir, and that I guess I would call it my home-based church, which is the one that I showed you guys recently that the Father called me back to. That was every Sunday. That's where I went to Bible camp. That's where we did Bible vacation school. That's where I was in the chorus. That's where we went on Wednesday nights. It's where my sister got married. I always call it the home-based church because it's not the only one that we went to. The one that I actually got saved at 10 years old was a Pentecostal church, I believe that's what it's called. It was in Lonaconee. And it's a really good witness to God, because I was so used to going to church every day, or my uncle randomly showing up and being like, oh, we're going to this tent revival, oh, we're going here, oh, because he was constantly seeking his Father. I believe him to be a prophet. I believe that he had gifts and abilities that the world tried to beat out of him, but you can't take away what God has given you. No one can. Devil can twist it, but they can't take it away. So when I would go to the churches that would say these things that I was seeing and experiencing weren't from God, that causes a little confusion, because you're like, I'm really experiencing these things and you're telling me they're not real, and you're telling me my imagination is making this up, and you're telling me the opposite of what God's word says. You'll know them by their fruits. Test them always. And test them against the book, not man. Don't test them against man. When I have a question, I'll say, well, what did Yahusha say? What was the words of Yahusha? You can get right into the Google and said, about this topic, what did Yahusha say? Where is the scripture? Let me read his words on top of, before the prophets, before these other books, before man. What did Yahusha say? Now, as I'm little, I didn't know him as that. I knew him as Jesus. Too much is given. So, about 10 years old, I've now witnessed the miracle from my father of saving my mother and starting to hear her testimony, how God changed her life, and she went back to school and she got clean. We had lost my grandmother when I was 8 years old. It's a whole nother testimony. But my mother goes back to school, she gets clean, she gets close to God, she now starts witnessing and testifying her beautiful story and her relationship with God. And she believed the way that I believe. He was there, you could talk to him. He was there, man. Beside me every day. And he started giving me these dreams at nighttime. And the one that I had over and over again, which I can still see in my head, the ending of this dream, and I'm a little girl. I'm like 9, 10, 11 years old in my dream. Obviously, that's how old I was when I was having him, and I'm holding this silver sword, and I'm standing in the middle of kind of looked more like a Rome Colosseum that had been destroyed, and there's fire everywhere, and it looks like a war zone is the only way that I can explain it. It looked like something blew everything up. And I'm standing close to one of the walls that still stood. It was like the last wall, but it had crumbled, and there's, rocks and everything around me, and I'm standing with this sword, and it's in the ground, and behind me is a dragon. Huge dragon. But I know that the dragon had been defeated at this point. Like, I didn't feel any harm, even though the world was in this chaotic state of burning, and this dragon is behind me with his wings spread, but I'm standing there with this sword in the ground. And my father would say, "You will see the end. You'll be there in the end." But knowing that the dragon was being defeated, Satan, that old serpent. And this is a dream that I had on repeat a lot. There were dreams that I would being attacked by demons. I had multiple dreams like that. Multiple warnings. And I would tell them to my mom and the people that are around me. And they believed. Other people didn't believe. They always tried to brush it off. People don't want to hear the ending of the book. They do only want to hear the things that tickle their ears, the things that make them feel joyful and protected, or like we're going to get out of having to face what's coming. And in my visions and my dreams, the Father never taught me about a rapture. The church did at the time, but the Father never confirmed that for me. And if there was a rapture, I came to the understanding that I was going to be here alive at the end of times. And I thank God for a rapture that would take other people, but for me, I was to be here. And I understood that. Even at 9 and 10 years old, I understood that. So, when I was 10 years old, my uncle shows up randomly, and he takes me out to this church in Lonacone. And I remember sitting in the pew. I think we were only like 2 pews back, because we were usually always up front. I don't remember what the preacher was preaching about that night. I don't remember even listening to the message that was going on. I remember having like paper or something, and I'm like doodling or I'm coloring. But obviously I was listening. And about the end of the service, I had to go potty. So I got up and I went downstairs to go to the bathroom. I sat down and I peed. I'm 10 years old. And here the toilet seat had been down. Like, I don't know why I didn't even check, but ended up peeing. It's all over my pants. Oh, it was so embarrassing. So I clean up the bathroom and I get back upstairs, and I'm like, it's the end of the service. I just got to be able to make it to get home. I was trying not to be seen and come back in like this, Like, oh, please don't let anybody notice that my pants are wet. Please don't let my uncle realize that this just happened. This is so embarrassing. And I didn't want to be yelled at and all those, little kid fears and anxieties that you had. And I just meekly got back into my pew, and I'm sitting there like this, and they're doing the altar call. And the pastor keeps saying, there's somebody else out there. Somebody else that needs to be saved. I had a personal relationship with Father already. And I kept trying to sit there, and I kept thinking, oh, I hope that person, I would look around and I'd be like, oh, I hope that person really gets up there. I want to get out of here. My pants are wet. I'm covered in pee. Oh, it can't be me. My father wouldn't want me to go up there in my pee pants. And I'm continuing to sit there, and he continues to pray. And then it was like in a blink of an eye, I stood up. It's the Holy Spirit that made me stand up. And I'm in the front of this church. And I'm confessing. And I'm crying. And I'm asking God to do the things that He does when you confess for sins. You know, be with me, Father. Save me. It wasn't me that day that did that. I didn't want to go up there in my pee pants. At like 10 years old. All I wanted to do was hide like a little mouse. But He made me. He guided me. And I remember my uncle was so excited. He took me out for ice cream afterwards, and he said, "Do you understand what this means? Your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life." And we went home, and we went inside, and we were so excited and could just come barreling in the house to tell my mom that I remember her face being frightened at first because she didn't understand what was going on. And then I remember my Uncle Butch telling my mom, she's saved, she's in the Book of Life, she's saved. And we celebrated. We celebrated, as I believe you should. We gave glory to our Father and thanked Him. We forget to be thankful so much. My family, who was poor, was thankful for any little thing, and we thanked God. We didn't thank anybody else. We didn't thank ourselves. We didn't thank our jobs. We thanked our Father for supplying these things in these ways and these truths. After I was saved, the messages became clearer, the visions became clearer, the talking to God every day continued to be the same, but with a different understanding, maybe the age of understanding. And I dived harder into what the Father told me a lot of the times when I was out sitting in a tree reading my Bible, or frolicking through the meadows, speaking to Him and asking Him to show me what to look for. And He would tell me one distinct thing that I remember very well. He said, there will come a time where Satan will take over my churches. And there will come a time, real big sign, that you will know that I am God. And I have given you this message. And He said, there will come a day when in an instant they'll close all the churches. All the churches will be closed down. And my daughter, for you, this is a sign. And you will have to use your voice to tell them what I've told you. Yes, Father, I can do that, Father, yes. Now in the background, this is when my mom's starting to get sick. We're studying Revelations. We've had a lot of odd things happen in our house. I'll tell you, one time my sister threw me out of our bedroom because she was 6 years older than me. So I was sleeping on the big orange couch in my living room. And I abruptly awoke from a sleep in that paralyzed state. Fear. Paralyzed. And I look at my front door, which had a big window in it, and there's a pair of red glowing eyes. I could feel the evil. And I tried to be like, no, it's just your imagination, it's just your imagination. Look around the room. Is there anything that could be bouncing off that glass? To make that. But there wasn't, because there wasn't a lot of different things at nighttime that was even turned on. Again, it's the end of 80s, early 90s. And we're very poor. I mean, very poor. TV's not on. There isn't an alarm clock that glows red, in the room or anything like that. And I'm paralyzed with fear. And I knew my mom's bedroom, I could see her because I was in the living room. And like I said, the bedroom was off the living room and her door was open. And I could see her laying in there, and I wanted to scream out to her. But I knew if I screamed that whatever was on the outside of that door would break in. I knew it without a doubt. So I prayed. I prayed to my Father, closed my eyes, I prayed. I prayed and prayed, and I fell back asleep. And then day came. That's one experience that you can't take away from me. There was nothing in that room to make those red glowing eyes. There was nothing outside of our house. As a matter of fact, on the outside of our house was our front yard and then a giant street light that, lit up our whole front yard and most of our porch. Nothing red. First, what do they call it? Sleep paralysis. When I was in the bedroom that me and my sister slept in, we had the attic, the pull-down attic stairs. Creepy things. I'd be laying in bed talking to the Father or praying or playing or anything, and that thing would start to creak. And it would start to open. And it would get to this far. And I would feel it. I would feel the evil that was around. You can feel it when these things enter or when they're trying to torment you or scare you. And it would close. And then it would open. And then it would close. Now mind you, again, I'm like 9, 10, 11, 12. In a world that was much different than our 11, 12-year-olds nowadays, 13-year-olds. And, I would try to make excuses for it and be like, oh, your mind's just playing tricks on you. Oh, your eyes are just be deceiving. But I knew to pray, so I'd always pray. Hey, got some weird stuff going on down here, Dad. I'm going to need you to put that blood of Jesus around me. Protect me. And I would say out loud, you can't touch me. I'm a child of God. Flee. With no doubt. That's the biggest thing. That childlike faith. With no doubt. You proclaim. Those things have to flee. More miracles I witnessed all the time. The power of our Father. Another experience I have, which I think I've posted before, was the laughing clown. That was more towards the end of my mom's life, when her friend bought her that clown. That's something my stepfather, can witness too, that happened. That clown didn't have any batteries. It was like out of a movie. You could feel the evil all around, and we just prayed harder. My sister and my stepfather have a testimony about the night that my mom died and what they felt in that house and what they seen. I'll tell it from how they told me. My sister had went back to, my stepdad was still there. I must have went to Uncle Butchie's. I don't remember where I was, but I don't think I ever stayed in my childhood home after the night my mother died, so I was probably with Uncle Butchie right away. I'm not sure. I can't remember that part. The world kind of just stopped and slowed down for me at that time. But I guess my brother-in-law my soon-to-be brother-in-law at that time, had been at my mom's house. I don't know why, but he must have left his glasses. So my sister went back that night to find his glasses, and she said she looked up and down and everywhere, and she just couldn't find David's glasses, and she couldn't find David's glasses. And her and my stepdad were sitting on the couch, and again, like from the living room, there was a big opening We had, I guess that's a gas furnace where you used to have to fill it up, and it had the grate over it. It was big. You used to stand over it and all the warm would shoot out. Because Mom used to hang the clothes there to dry in this big doorway. And she said, we started to pray, and we're praying. And my stepfather confirms it, and then something evil began to choke him. He said the harder he prayed, the more it felt like it was strangling them around their necks. They're getting up and they're praying against this thing. And my sister, who was very faithful, who never opened her eyes when she prayed, she said she just got this feeling to open her eyes. So she looks up. She wants to see what they're battling. And as she did, out through that doorway and into the kitchen, there's this just bright light. When she opens her eyes, the brightest she's ever seen. And it blocks out everything else. And they got up and they got out of that house. I'm sure my stepfather and my sister can tell that testimony a lot better than I can, because I was not there to experience that. I do understand the demons that were in our home. And that was the night after my mom passed away. Another time, right before my mom passed away, I was out in the kitchen doing the dishes. So I'm in the kitchen. Here's the middle room, here's the living room, and right off of the living room is my mom's room. I'm back doing the dishes, and there's a window above the sink. And out back are my dogs. We had 2 dogs out back, Taffy and Sugar, out back. And then there was a clothesline right outside. And I hated it. I hated doing dishes at nighttime because I hated windows. I hated windows because of the red eyes and the dreams that I would have of things coming in my bedroom window after me and things of such, and aliens. I had a lot of dreams of aliens, which I now realize are fallen beings. Now they're doing dishes, and I just get that feeling. It's a feeling. It's like the atmosphere changes. The sensation. Everything around me starts to feel evil. So I pause. I remember I had my hands like this, and I paused, and I could feel that it was coming from behind me. And I start to hear this. It felt like hundreds of feet. Probably legion. Just hundreds. And I get this feeling, and I scream in my head out to God, Father, protect me. I don't know what this is. Protect me. And I feel this gush of evil in this wind. It blew my hair. And I watched it hit the clothesline where the clothes were, and the clothes blew, and all of a sudden my dogs are barking. A bark of protection. Row, 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 row. Out there in the darkness. They were farther, so I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. And I spun around, and I ran. I ran as fast as I could into my mom's room. I jumped onto bed. Mom, this is what just happened to me. This is what I just experienced. And I can vividly see the look on her face. Because for her, it was a sign from our Father. And she looked me right in the eye, and she said, baby girl, we were casting out demons. We were back here casting out demons. From my understanding now, as an adult, we are assigned these things from the beginning. They're assigned. We're at a war. I think that frustrates me the most, that people that say they read this every day, and they're studying and they're seeking the Father, but they don't understand that the only thing that we're to look forward to is the end. Whereas a lot say, the second coming of Christ, even if you believe that the 1,000-year reign hasn't happened yet, then you should be preparing for Jesus to come back. Yahushua should come back, So it's so conflicting. But instead they think that we're supposed to still be building these great cities and these great nations, but that is not what Yahushua said. It's not in there that way. We weren't supposed to build the kingdom down here. We're supposed to build the kingdom up there that is to come. And that should be so simple if you read it. Truly read it. Those are a few experiences that I had with other beings at a young age. And like I told you yesterday, my mom's faith, oh man, it outshines anything that I had witnessed in a long time. And when my friends and my family, especially one of my best friends, comes at me for why I believe Dustin, and it's because for decades I hadn't seen a person with the faith like my mother in all those years. Every word of this is true. Every word. And no one has taught it like that since my mother that I have encountered. I know there's others out there. This is my personal experience. Who had that undeniable faith and a love for our Father. A genuine, true love for our Father. And after many years, which will be in my testimony, that my Father led me to Dustin for a time such as this, because I had questions that no one else could answer. Not church buildings, not preachers, not other people that said they were in the faith. Because when I came out, I found it was the same as when I was little. Well, that can't be true. And how do you know? And people that try to cause doubt. And I don't believe that they mean it. I just don't believe that they understand. When my mom went back to the doctors the last time, I went off to Bible camp with the First Church of God, the place that my childhood church. And I was at Bible camp when I was abruptly pulled from there to go home. My mom didn't get the diagnosis from the doctor that she wanted, of course. But in the process, had she done it, we had been... I guess she was going to sell our house and she was going to buy a farm. It was her dream to have a farm and to have horses and to grow her own food. She knew then to get away from the government. She knew then that they were poisoning us. She knew then to remove yourself from the world. That's why I chased having a farm all my life. You'll hear my story. I've been on a couple different farms. I always wanted my own. I never actually got one of my own where I could have these horses and these things. But I told you last night, I watched Waco happen. I was so young for so many years until the Father led me to remember I'd forgotten we watched Waco, and I forgot that I was in the room listening to, like, my Uncle Butch and my stepdad and my mother speak of these things. Maybe not to me directly, but to each other, of warning about false prophets. They were always waiting and watching. Always looking for the signs. But they pulled me from church camp because she had gotten a grim diagnosis. So all that went up in smoke. Again, this is just bits and pieces because I believe it's been every day. I believe that our Father knew me before He formed me in my mother's womb. I believe that He predestined, He ordained every step I've ever taken. Don't believe me? The Bible tells you that. The morning after my mother passed, I'd fallen asleep, like I said, and I'd never fallen asleep, and I thought truly we were there that night by ourselves. Truly it haunted me for a long time. But that morning I heard this creaking. This creaking is what woke me up, the creaking of the middle room floor, like somebody was walking past my door. It did that every time you walk past. I heard the creaking, and it woke me up. And the world felt different immediately. I remember opening my eyes, and the room felt heavy. My door was closed. The room felt heavy, and it felt different, and it felt... Now I could explain it as like my timeline shifted. Something changed. Something huge had changed in the world. And I thought that my stepfather had just gotten home from work. And I didn't hear my mom crying. I didn't hear her praying. And that was different than the weeks, the months leading up to this. And I thought, oh, the Father gave her rest. She's sleeping. Let me get up and tell my stepdad to be quiet because she needs her rest. And as I got up out of my bed, got up on the left side, it was like I could feel the air move as I moved, like a resistant type of thing. It's so heavy. And I got to my door, and I think that I knew what was to come. Like in an instant, it was like I knew as I went to open my door. And I hadn't made a sound except for getting out of bed. And I opened my door, and it wasn't my mom's hospital bed that I seen first. There was my Uncle Butch. He was always there, like he knew. Or like God led him to do. And I opened the door, and there's my Uncle Butch. He's 6 foot something, you know. Big, strong man. And I just look up at him because I'm still little at this point. I'm still just a child, just a baby. It was so different then. 13 was so different for me. And he just says, "She's gone." And I've collapsed into his arms. I think he might have caught me. And he hugged me, and he must have spun us around because now I'm facing my room door and seeing the light shine in the window. But in the turning, I seen that my mom's hospital bed was laid flat. There was a sheet all the way covering her. So I'm taking all of this in all at one time. My mom couldn't lay down flat anymore from the pancreas cancer. She couldn't be flat. It hurt her so bad, so she was always setting up. She was at the hospital bed. Or like the pictures that we have of her, she always had pillows. She's always sitting up. She couldn't lay flat anymore. There towards the end, you couldn't even touch her. And I'm sobbing in his arms. And word for word, this is what he said to me. If this makes you feel any better. She died with her hands in the air. And in that moment, a peace came over me. Because remember, I prayed the night before. And when the peace took over, I smiled a little. Because even in all that sorrow, I knew my Father answered my prayer. Her death was a miracle. She got to go wherever we go after here. She wasn't in this pain. She wasn't suffering. He took her home. For 13-year-old me, he took her home. She's in heaven. The last day my mom was alive, in the afternoon time. I don't remember going to school that day, but it was a Friday. Friday the 13th, actually. October the 13th, Friday, 1995. I'm sure there's a significant thing there. I remember I went outside to play that day and I forgot to leave her enzymes. I made her food because I had to make the food and stuff and take care of the house. So childlike and mature all at the same time and so weird. But I had forgotten to put her enzyme pills next to her table. She had to take 7 of them before she ate, and she had to eat and then take 7 of them because your pancreas obviously makes your digestive things to digest your food. But I forgot. And I went down in the woods, and I'm down there talking to God, and I'm playing. There was this big concrete thing, I think that I've posted it before on my page. I've went to visit it within the last couple of years, where my mom used to go down, and she would take a rock, and it's a manhole. It's a big manhole, but it's on this big square manhole in the middle. I was down there playing and talking to God, and I heard my mom's whistle. Oof. This is how she used to call us home. I can't do it like she could. Or we were in trouble. And I heard my mom's whistle. I heard her yelling for me. So I come flying up. Run. She's standing at the back door. But she was a little angry at that time. She said, "You forgot my pills." I spent years feeling guilty because I forgot those pills. When something like that happens to you as a child, you relive that day over and over and over again. And it must have taken everything my mom had to get up to walk to that back door to even whistle for me, because at that time we had to have a porta potty next to her bed, so she couldn't get up. She was so weak. Later in the evening that night, before she started to call out to her mom, she called me to her bedside. I think that she knew. She said, "I just want you to know that I love you. Even when I'm not here, I love you." She made sure to tell me that when she did leave this earth, if that was our Father's will, that she was at peace. She got to go home. And all the things that he promised us in here, she gets to have that reward. Her favorite song was The Old Rugged Cross.